Hi, folks. I wanted to talk to you this weekend about this past week, and I've been thinking about my reactions to everything that's been going on, and this is what I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about the sort of normalization of lies, the normalization of what we're experiencing, and the extent to which I think, and I've been asked about sort of grasping at straws, saying, look, isn't this a good sign? Like, for an example, the Supreme Court decision with respect to not overruling the district court's temporary restraining order for USAID funds. And there was a 5-4 decision with the Chief Justice and Amy Coney Barrett joining the three so-called liberal justices. And like, isn't that a good sign? And I just want to stop and realize that I think that we're in danger of normalizing what's going on and sort of seeing that there are all sorts of analogies. The goalposts have been moved to take a much more dire analogy. I think about Hannah Arendt, who was sort of a mid-20th century philosopher who coined the phrase the banality of evil when she was thinking about what happened in Germany in the 30s and 40s. And I think there's a real danger right now that we are experiencing that kind of banality of lies, the normalization of lies, in some ways, sort of Stockholm syndrome, where we're so thankful when a little bit of good happens in a world of crazy. I was early this morning, I sort of woke up and just was starting to think about what has happened since January 20th. And here's just a few examples of things that are so abnormal and tell us exactly where we are right now as a country. First, we have a president who decided to pardon every single person who was charged and or convicted in the January 6th cases. So over 1,500 people, a whole slew of whom were found guilty of attacking police officers. We all saw with our own eyes what happened. So we have a president who is a convicted felon who has released other convicted felons who engaged in crimes that are incredibly serious that go to the core of our democracy. That should be game over. Game over. It's not that he doesn't have the legal ability to do that because the pardon power is so strong. It's that he did it. He also didn't stop there. He pardoned Rod Blagojevich, who was convicted of selling a Senate seat. That also should be game over. Here's some other things. I spent a lot of time talking about and writing about what he's doing in the Eric Adams case. That's Mayor Eric Adams, where he is seeking to dismiss those charges, but without prejudice, keeping him on a choke collar so that he can implement his own federal immigration policies. That is not what criminal law is for. And you saw the resignation of a slew of prosecutors who were refusing to go along with that. Prosecutors who are not just deep state Democrats, but in fact Federalist Society members who understand that. That should be game over. You have the new Attorney General, Pam Bondi, eliminating the election interference group at the Department of Justice. Why on God's green earth would you do that unless you were saying election interference is a good thing? Why would you get rid of that? Should be game over. Similarly, they got rid of all sort of meaningful enforcement of the Foreign Agents Registration Act, which puts severe prohibitions on secret lobbying by foreigners, and particularly foreign governments, of people in the United States. Why would you not want to enforce that more? Chuck Grassley, of all people, Senator Chuck Grassley, has loudly decried the anemic response of the Department of Justice to so-called FARA prosecutions. He thinks there should be many more. but now they're virtually being eliminated. The Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, the Attorney General announced that this is something that's not going to be prosecuted, but for drug cartels. Drug cartels don't violate the FCPA. So that is being eradicated. Why would you do that? That is saying it's open season to have bribery across the globe and be completely transactional and not rule of law. The news is reporting that people are paying up to $5 million just to have dinner with President Trump. This is basically turning us into just a presidency for sale. It's just, how can you monetize the presidency for the highest bidder? As if we're some, I won't even say third world country, because that doesn't happen there in the way that it's happening here before our eyes. The idea of like selling dinners with the presidency, it was a huge deal when donors under the Bill Clinton administration were invited to stay at the Lincoln bedroom in the White House. This makes that look like a nothing burger. You have the firing of the 3 top judge advocate generals, the 3 independent lawyers in the military. Those people were fired without cause. Why would you do that unless you're planning to do something improper, illegal, or immoral with respect to the military? News has reported that Jeff Clark, somebody who was instrumental by all accounts in the effort by Donald Trump to upend the election for so-called election fraud, with no evidence, that Jeff Clark was perfectly fine to have the Department of Justice announce that it was doing a fraud investigation, when a whole slew of people at the department were saying there's no fraud to investigate, that's only being done as a ruse. And Jeff Clark is now, guess what? He's now an employee of the OMB, the Office of Management and Budget. Why would you rehire him but to have somebody who is essentially a confirmed insurrectionist, who's a loyalist of Donald Trump, but including not just loyal in a good way, but loyal in doing things that are a sort of anathema to one's oath of office? The firing of the heads of the FBI in New York, the leadership of the FBI in DC, and the rounding up of names of anyone who worked on the January 6th case. So now you've freed the defendants, but you want to round up the people who investigated this, as if it's improper to investigate. It would be a dereliction of duty for them not to have investigated. Why would you possibly want their names for any good reason? You have the president attacking the defense firm, a very well-respected law firm based in Washington, D.C., for the sin of representing Jack Smith. And if there's anything this president should understand, it's the value of and how much being a defense counsel is a noble profession and not to be denigrated, no matter who you're representing, even if you disagree with what the defendant is alleged to have done. That's part of our system. I've talked about John Adams and how he did that in the 18th century with respect to representing 8 British soldiers. But the mere denigration is, again, what does that say about where we are, that the president of the United States is attacking somebody just for being defense counsel, something that he knows very well the value of? And you have, something that's just so upsetting, which is that our allegiance to Ukraine is now, not only are we not supporting them, but we're siding with Russia. Let's leave aside why, because it's really hard to understand why you would do that. It's not like there's a voter bloc in the United States for Vladimir Putin. He is still an extremely unpopular person here. And so you do have to ask yourself, why on God's green earth, sorry to keep we're using that phrase, as you folks know, I use that so I'm not cursing. Why would you possibly be doing that? But let's leave aside the why. Let's just talk about the what. The idea that you would not be siding with an independent sovereign nation that was invaded and actually say that they invaded themselves and that they started the war themselves, and you'd be siding with the attacker and not the victim, and then abusing the victim. That is where we are. Those are all undeniable things. Those are things that we've either seen with our own eyes, we've heard with our own ears. There's completely solid reporting. They've not been denied. Those are things that, by the way, doesn't touch a whole slew of other things involved with Elon Musk and the lies about his position and what he's doing, and the dismantling of all parts of government, the nomination of somebody to run HHS who is completely unqualified, or the DNI who's completely unqualified, in my view. Leaving all of that aside, the litany I just gave you tells you where we are. It is undeniable, and it is not something that we should normalize. We need to have that as a firm tent pole as to where we are, and not let sort of MAGA movement move the goalposts so that we're sort of just grateful that things aren't as bad as they could be, because they are. So I know that I'm now talking about sort of one part of the equation, which is making sure that people understand where we are as a country and what is happening, and not putting their heads in the sand, and not putting their heads in the sand. The second part of this is what to do about it. I have spoken about it in this format, as of others, and so you can certainly go to What Can I Do, which is a post that I did, because there's a lot that you can do, but the main thing is make your voices heard. People really respond to that, and it is really useful to figure out all of the ways that you can do that. The power of the elected officials comes from us, not vice versa. They work for us. We do not work for them. And the more that you can have your voice heard and amplified and right, and for those of you who can afford it, use your wallet. But there are ways, even if you can't, to make sure that your voice is heard, to speak up and speak out about this. The polls are really important here. As everyone knows, the members of Congress have really not been stepping up, particularly on the Republican side. But if the polls continue to slide for President Trump, that is where you will see more movement, because there'll be less fear engendered by this administration. So for those of you who are looking what to do, there is a lot. But I think it has to start with people realizing where we are, and not allowing us to sort of have Stockholm syndrome, and to sort of wake up about where we are, because there are undeniable facts about what is going on. So I know this is not an uplifting weekend post, but I think it's a really important thing to be said, and it's certainly something that I've been thinking about in the way I've been processing what is going on, and trying to not react to little shards of good news as if that is something more than what it is, which is just, putting your finger in the dike for just a little bit while, the floods are sort of coming in. So with that, I do hope that everyone has a great weekend and does something fun and enjoyable, and you get rest and relaxation and enjoyment out of life. But remember what is ahead. Thanks so much. For those of you who are not sick of me and want more, on the right, you can subscribe to my Substack, and to my left, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. So I hope you do. If you enjoy this, subscribe to one or both. Thank you.